Flame Hashira Kyojuro Rengoku was no match for the upper rank 3 demon, Akaza. His death was pretty much guaranteed the moment they met. But not wanting to waste Rengoku's potential, Akaza offered to turn him into a demon. Rengoku refused, but what if I told you that by changing just a single detail of their encounter, the Flame Hashira would have no choice but to accept? This is a story of what if Rengoku became a demon. So pretty much everything about their encounter remains the same. Tanjiro can't fight thanks to his wounds, Zenitsu and Nezuko are knocked out, and Inosuke was just way too weak to get involved without dying. But here's the thing, instead of Akaza dealing with a time limit thanks to the rising of the sun, if they were all able to escape from Enmu's blood demon art a bit sooner, there would be no reason for Akaza to run away. Even with his left eye destroyed, his ribs broken, and some internal bleeding, Rengoku refused to let anyone die. But in this case, the only leverage he'd have to keep everyone safe would be his own humanity. Rengoku would accept Akaza's blood under the condition that they leave immediately afterwards, killing no one. Akaza probably wouldn't like that very much, but considering how happy the thought of fighting Rengoku forever made him, he'd accept the proposal. Tanjiro and Inosuke would definitely be against this, but would still mourn him all the same, blaming their own weakness for his sacrifice. Rengoku would give them both the same parting words as before, but this time, he'd also tell them to get stronger and face him when they're ready. This transformation would immediately make Rengoku one of the strongest demons to have ever existed. When Doma turned Daki and Gyutaro into demons, they went on to become upper rank 6. When Kokushibo turned Kaigaku into a demon, he became upper rank 4. As a Hashira, and someone who was able to stop and keep Akaza's fist in place even with his guts pierced, there is no doubt that he would be stronger than them and an immediate member of the Upper Moons. Although Muzan might be upset with Tanjiro's survival, such a valuable addition to their ranks would be more than enough to satisfy him for the time being. Akaza has made the same offer to plenty of worthy Hashira in the past, but Rengoku would have been the first to actually accept. Incredible power aside, Rengoku's insider knowledge of the Demon Slayer core would be a major bonus to the Demon Lord. Meanwhile, news of Rengoku's transformation would quickly spread, stunning his former comrades. Everyone loved him for his passionate and positive outlook on life, so the thought of him becoming everything he hated would be a major blow. The Sound Hashira, Tengen Uzui, who especially admired him, would probably want to take him down immediately. And as Rengoku's former student, the love Hashira Mitsuri Kanroji would feel the exact same way. Kyojiro's dad Shinjiro would probably take this the hardest. Like the former Thunder Hashira Jigoro Kawajima, or even the vows we saw from both Gyu and Orokodaki related to Nezuko, he'd probably plan on ending his own life by way of seppuku. But with Tanjiro's visit to Rengoku's family home, he'd probably change his mind, deciding to instead repent like Yorichi tried to with Kokushibo. He'd do everything in his power to ensure his son's demise. So instead of being a complete jerk, he might actually train Tanjiro. Flame breathing and sun breathing are two entirely different styles. But Tanjiro has no doubt proven himself to be one of the most versatile demon slayers ever when it comes to this sort of thing. It would also help him better understand Rengoku's techniques for when he'd need to face them in battle. Now, with the abolishment of the lower ranks ahead of the Mugen Train arc, for Rengoku to truly be recognized as an upper rank demon, he'd have to prove himself worthy of the position. All things considered, Demon Rengoku would most likely be in line to become the new upper rank 4. This would shift Tengu to upper rank 5 and Yoko to upper rank 6, which I'm sure they wouldn't be very happy about. But things would certainly be much worse for Daki and Gyutaro. Daki was certainly strong, but not nearly enough to really be considered upper rank material. She and her brother were more or less just a package deal, one that with the addition of Rengoku had outlived its usefulness. So for the sake of their own survival, given the sort of ruler Muzan is, he'd likely have them fight against Rengoku in blood combat. And for as strong as those two proved themselves to be during the Entertainment District arc, they'd have no chance of winning against Demon Rengoku. Fights between demons were pretty pointless for the most part since they couldn't actually kill each other. Gyutaro's poison was incredibly deadly, but totally ineffective against fellow demons. And Tengen could easily decapitate Daki without a second thought. So there's no doubt that a Demon Rengoku could do the very same thing. And thanks to his Nichiren blade, he'd have the perfect tool to do so permanently. Muzan would be well aware of how futile their efforts would be, instead using this slaughter as an excuse to see his new pet in action. Because of this, the Entertainment District arc as we know it would cease to be. Instead of that mission, Tengen would take it upon himself to hunt down Rengoku. And thanks to his shinobi past, locating him wouldn't be all that difficult. Despite now being a demon, Rengoku's spirit would still be incredibly strong. He might not be able to survive off sleep like Nezuko, but seeing as Akaza refuses to harm or eat women, it is not hard to imagine that Rengoku would be a picky eater too. The best he could do in this new demon form would be to only eat terrible criminals. By feeding on only the worst of the worst, it wouldn't take long for Tengen to track him. Their fight would be legendary. Even as a human, Rengoku's physical strength and speed were enough to momentarily overwhelm Akaza. As a demon, these attributes would be even more impressive. But even still, Tengen had always been the fastest Hashira. And thanks to his musical score technique, the longer their battle proved to be, the more he'd rhythmically adapt to the demon's movements. He might even gain the upper hand. But that's all before Rengoku reveals his blood demon art. As we've seen from both Kaigaku's thunder breathing and Kokushibo's moon breathing, a former demon slayer's blood demon art was usually a greater manifestation of their fighting style's elemental affinity. In the case of Rengoku, that would mean greater manipulation of his flames. The fifth form, Flame Tiger, would be really cool and allow him to use the tigers as minions. It would be like how the gun demon he killed to become a Hashira was able to summon shadowy hounds. And the thing about fire is that it's really hot. For the most part, demon slayers have no choice but to fight up close and personal. That would be a death sentence against Rengoku. But ultimately, the deciding factor of this fight between Demon Rengoku and Tengen would be a lack of oxygen. Thanks to all the fire, Tengen would slowly but surely be deprived of proper breathing conditions, reducing the effectiveness of his techniques and limiting the brain function necessary for his musical score. But despite his victory, instead of killing Tengen outright, Rengoku would simply leave him for dead. Knowing that the Kakushi wouldn't be far behind, this was the best he could do for his former friend without defying his new master. With his grave injuries and missing limbs, Tengen would be unable to continue as a demon slayer. Thankfully, the location of Swordsmith Village was kept a secret even from the Hashira, so Rengoku would not be able to expedite its invasion by telling Muzan anything. So that arc would play out pretty much the same as how we remember it. At most, there might be more rough mentions of him from Mitsuri and Muichiro. And there's no doubt that Akaza would take every chance he could to fight and train against Rengoku. But for as fun as this would be for Akaza at first, it wouldn't take long for him to realize that Demon Rengoku was on the verge of surpassing him as well. This was something he had already experienced with Doma, who despite joining their ranks later than him, was able to swiftly surpass him, much to Akaza's frustration as someone who longed to be the absolute strongest being possible. Even as a human, Rengoku put up a very good fight against him. So now, without having to worry about injuries and such, their fights would be very different. All Akaza would have over him would be the fact that he'd eaten more humans. Muzan would not allow Rengoku to kill Akaza. So instead, the two would have to settle for a bitter rivalry. From there, we would have the final arc of the story, the Infinity Castle. Because Tanjiro would have never called him a coward, and Muzan wouldn't have scolded him for failing to kill the kid, Akaza and Tanjiro wouldn't hate each other's guts nearly as much. Because of this, it wouldn't really make narrative sense or be nearly as satisfying to have him fight Akaza now. So instead, the ones to fight Akaza in this timeline would be Gyu and Tanjiro's new master, Shinjiro Rengoku. He'd reclaim his position as Flame Hashira after being inspired by Tanjiro. After all, having him be in the group of people watching over Nezuko didn't really do anything for the story. He may not look like much on account of all the drinking, but to be fair, he had only been away from the position for a year or two max. And we can't overlook the fact that the Rengoku family had been demon slayers for hundreds of years. They are the only family dynasty in Hashira history for a reason. The combination of water and flame against Akaza would be magnificent. And since Akaza couldn't kill Kyojuro, killing his dad would be the next best thing. That, along with how fun Gyu was to fight, would be more than enough to entertain him. And because Akaza would have faced Rengoku's flame breathing countless times by then, Shinjiro, besides being a bit rusty, would definitely struggle here. But here's the thing, Shinjiro never finished training Kyojuro. He completely stopped and left his son to figure it all out for himself after his wife died, meaning he would be able to catch Akaza off guard with some unexpected moves. And one of the coolest things about this matchup would be the fact that Shinjiro would be able to represent an older version of his son. Akaza belittled Kyojuro by claiming that his incredible skills would degrade with age and make him worthless. Shinjiro would prove him wrong, and over the course of the battle, Gyu would go on to manifest his Demon Slayer mark. And thanks to having these things spread like a fever, Shinjiro would eventually do so as well, becoming stronger again despite his age. But like the stone of Shirogyome, because Shinjiro was well past the age of 25, after this fight, the Demon Slayer Mark was bound to kill him. It would honestly be really poetic. Both Shinjiro and Akaza would reflect on the downward spiral of watching those they'd loved fall victim to illness. For Akaza, it was his father and the woman he loved. And for Shinjiro, it was his wife. With the outcome of this battle, like Kokushibo and Doma, Rengoku would instinctively know that Akaza had been defeated. And from there, he'd be met by the boy he believed in most to claim his head, Tanjiro. This fight would be absolutely grueling, both physically and emotionally. Despite any reservations, at the end of the day, Rengoku is a demon, and much of his humanity would be gone by this point. He would hold nothing back against Tanjiro, but recognizing just how much stronger the boy had become in such a short span of time, a part of him would be very proud. Now, the reason Tanjiro would actually be able to put up a good fight against Demon Rengoku is pretty simple. Not only was he able to train with and against a flame breather, but because the events of the Entertainment District arc would have never taken place, he would have never been in a coma for 2 months. That means plenty more time for training and missions. And considering the overwhelming majority of the missions we have seen don't even last a day, he would be able to get a lot of work done. So much in fact, that Tanjiro, Zenitsu, and Inosuke would actually be able to live up to Rengoku's expectations of them officially becoming Hashira. And at that level, instead of the week-long coma he was in following the events of the Swordsmith Village arc, he'd be much more like Muishiro and Mitsuri, who only needed 2 days of rest and were completely healed by the 3rd. Thanks to this, and more active involvement from Shinjiro, Tanjiro would be able to uncover the secrets of sun breathing far sooner. And with that, he would be closer to Yurichi levels than anyone else. And with an arsenal of techniques that surpassed all others, all throughout the battle, Demon Rengoku would have a very hard time anticipating his moves. But just when Tanjiro looked to be overwhelming him, something miraculous would happen. As a swordsman himself, in the presence of someone like Tanjiro, who was able to push him this far, Demon Rengoku would manifest his own Demon Slayer Mark. This would bring his strength to new heights, making him almost as powerful as Kokushibo. It would take everything Tanjiro had to win this fight. But even with the demon's newfound access to the transparent world, because Tanjiro could completely mask his bloodlust and do the very same thing with his red Nichiren blade and the 13th form of sun breathing, he'd finally have the strength to put an end to the nightmare once and for all. And on the verge of passing out from exhaustion, Tanjiro would hear the demon express his gratitude before finally fading away once and for all. If you enjoyed this little what-if story and want to see more like it, be sure to let us know in the comments. And if you have any particular suggestions you'd like to see us flesh out, feel free to drop those too. As always, I'm Slice of Otaku. Thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.